Hey y'all, this is Gary with Tennessee Stands, and I'm not going to get to everything, but I just wanted to bring you something to get you paying attention to what's happening right now in our special session in the legislature right now, dealing with education. There's a lot going on. I know I'm going to miss some stuff. I wasn't able to get to everything today, and probably some things that I come up with today may change, and more stuff will get introduced in the special session as we go over these next couple of days. But these are some things I just want you to be aware of, and some things that I think we should be paying attention to as parents and citizens here in Tennessee as this special session progresses. So here's a few bills that are going on. These first three Senate bills, 7001, 7002, and 7003. These are the governor's bills that he's talked about publicly, and I'll just run through those really, really fast. Senate Bill 7001 really deals with how the state is going to measure or not measure student growth data and the TCAP assessment tests for students. And basically, this bill sets it up in such a way where those tests due to the 2021 school year and the 2019-2020 school year, that bad test scores don't negatively affect the overall student assessment scores, especially in how that relates to teacher evaluations. So you've heard the phrase hold harmless. So essentially, what this bill does is holds the teachers harmless um, uh, for all of the learning loss that we've had in our response to COVID-19. I can't say I'm against this bill. I think there's a lot of really, really great teachers whose evaluations would significantly suffer because of the testing scores that we're now seeing coming from our students. And let's just face it, um, the school board's response to COVID-19 is not the fault of many of our great teachers that we have in our school systems. The problem, though, is that this is going to reward, let's just be frank, some really, really bad teachers out there. But it is what it is. I think, in a general sense, teachers are not at fault for the way that the schools have chosen to respond to COVID, though some of them have individually responded quite horribly. Senate Bill 7002. All of these are carried by Senator Jack Johnson, by the way, and that's typical as the majority leader, because in essence these are the governor's bills. So that's who's carrying these bills. Senate Bill 7002 is called the Tennessee, creates a new section of the code, an education code, and it's called the Tennessee Learning Loss Remediation and Student Acceleration Act. It's one of the governor's bills and it's going to pass, but I'm just telling you, I hate it, and here's why. Um, I'm not saying it doesn't need to pass. We have done the damage, and probably some of these mitigation efforts are needed to get so many of our students back on track. But the problem is throwing millions more budget dollars into what do they call them? After school mini camps, learning loss camps. And yes, you heard this right, summer learning camps, which are coming, I believe, starting the summer of 2021, this summer, for many students. All of these things can be mitigated right now, today, if we'd open the schools. Guess what every school district should be doing right now? Every charter school, every public school, every private school, to mitigate these. How many pages? Let's see here. To mitigate the 21 pages of nonsense right here that create learning loss camps, you should be opening the schools. Have we not determined yet that in-person education is how to reduce the learning loss that we're seeing right now? Open up the schools. We don't need to spend millions of dollars on after-school mini camps, education camps. We should be doing that in school, in class right now. So whatever, Tennessee Learning Loss Remediation and Student Acceleration Act, it's essentially a response and the throwing of a great amount of budget dollars to respond and fix the mess that we've created ourselves. Not that COVID-19 created, the mess that we've created and how we've responded as a government. So, yay, there you go, 7002. All right, Senate Bill 7003. Let's take a look at that. This is the Tennessee Literacy Success Act. This is what you've been seeing TV ads about, by the way, run by I think an organization called the Tennesseans for Student Success. They're actually based here in Franklin and in Nashville, and you should check them out. I don't know too much about them, to be honest. I'm going to learn more. There might be some fine people there, but seems to be more than meets the eye. The guy who runs it was a former campaign guy for Mitch McConnell. And I looked up their tax returns back in 2018. They did about $2.3 or so million. So they're not just a small little nonprofit helping your kids to read better. They're a well-funded group, and for whatever reason, they're really pushing this literacy act. And there are some scary statistics in here. I'm just going to be honest. Apparently, in 2019, Tennessee's third grade English language arts proficiency rate was 36.9%. That's pretty bad. Tennessee's eighth grade English proficiency rate. I need some English proficiency help while I'm trying to say the word proficiency. Was 27.1%. Not great. And apparently Tennessee is ranked 31st in the nation per fourth grade and eighth grade reading proficiency. So those numbers sound scary, certainly, but look, again, I'm sure there's some fine things. I know there's looks like there's a return to phonics and some good things in here, but frankly, we could deal with so much of this by fixing things that already exist in our schools. I'm not sure that we really need a new literacy program. I think we've been teaching people how to read for a long time. And also, again, if we were opening our schools and actually teaching our kids, they probably wouldn't be reading so bad. But, whatever. That's just me. So that's the three governors' bills, 7001, 7002, 7003. I think probably some inherent problems in all of those. But, we're already so far down the road in how we've responded to COVID. It's kind of like, what are you going to do now? All right, here's some bills. There's one really good bill in here that I'm going to get to in a minute, but here's some bills that I think concern me a little bit. This is Senate Bill 7006, run by Democrat Senator Akbari. I don't know that this is really a nefarious bill, but anytime the government says I'm going to measure something. So here they say that the annual report published in 2021 must include any available data regarding the extent of learning loss experienced by students K through 12 during the 2019, 2020, and 2021 school years as a result of school closures during the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, inherently, that sounds fine. I mean, I think being provided with a report on learning loss, we probably want to know those things. But what scares me is anytime the government says we want to report and we want to collect data on X, whatever that value is, what are they going to do with that data? How are they going to use that data? So we've had X amount of perceived learning loss. Well, what kind of opportunity then does that give the government to create some new program, to spend X amount of $1 million on this new thing because we have to respond to these terrible numbers that we've now discovered per learning loss? So again, I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad thing. We want to measure things, but anytime the government measures things, you have to then ask yourself, what are they measuring for, and what do they plan to do with that data? How do they plan to use it in the future? So Senate Bill 7006, I'd like a little bit more information on the intentions behind the bill, just something to keep in mind. Senate Bill 7009, again, run by Senator Johnson. This is really the $100 million appropriation you've been hearing about. So $67 million to deal with learning loss. That's really all that's said there. So that's just the big cash bucket that's available to deal with the bill I mentioned earlier. There's an appropriated amount of $30 million that's going to deal with salary increases, and then another 12.8 million to deal with salary increases and other certified staff. So there's roughly your $100 million. Probably partly some federal money there. I'm guessing that's going into the kitty there for apparently for our students, but probably not really. All right. Hey, here's one I like. Senate Bill 7017, run by Senator Hensley and Representative Ogles in the House. I like this bill. Do you know why? Because this bill actually deals with the root cause of learning loss. Literally, the first whereas clause, it says, whereas the in-person education of students in this state is vitally important to literacy. So let's just acknowledge, first off, what's important to literacy? How do we fix learning loss? In-person education. Here's what this bill does, and I love it. I wish it was stronger and it had more teeth to it, but I think it's a step in the right direction. So what it does is it gives the local school board or a governing body of a charter school the ability to create their own quarantine policies and implement those policies in an emergency. It also says there is no cause of action because of implementing those policies to a local school board. So it removes liability from the school board for the policies they put in place regarding quarantining. And then it also protects the local school board. It says during a state of emergency, major disaster, or natural disaster, a political subdivision, the commissioner of health, or a local health department shall not unilaterally prohibit a local board of education or charter school governing body from adopting or implementing a policy authorized under 49-6-3026, which is the statute they would have created that they can implement their own quarantining policies. Now, here's what all of this means. And certainly it could go south because this also gives the local school board the right to make some really, really bad policies. But here's why I think all in all, this bill is a good thing. It's because of this little word, one of my favorite words, accountability. Accountability. Wouldn't you like to be able to point to someone and hold someone accountable for the policies that are being put in place? And I'll give you a great example. Here in Williamson County, our superintendent, Jason Golden, has been nefarious for sending out emails and placing phone calls to families and saying, oh, you can't blame us for what's going on in our school system. It's all the health department's fault. We're just following the health department's guidelines. And so what the health department becomes for the school boards is a scapegoat, right? It's not our fault, it's the health department. So what this bill does is it squarely puts the decisions to make all of these nonsensical quarantining policies in the hands of the school board and makes sure that you and I know that the school board is accountable for those decisions. Not the health board, not a political subdivision, meaning not the county. It's the school board. And quite frankly, I have to say, I think that's where those decisions belong. It's now incumbent upon you and I to make sure that we have the right people on our school boards representing us. And I can tell you right now, we do not in many cases. And Tennessee Stands will be very active in 2022 trying to correct much of that. But nonetheless, Senate Bill 7017, Senator Hensley, Representative Ogles, thank you for this bill. I like it. I think we need to know who's accountable, and I think the accountability does belong with our school boards, and I think they need to know they are accountable. And I like the fact that you've removed the liability here so that school boards are not afraid to make the right decisions. I think so many of us so many of these boards are making decisions because nobody wants to be liable if something goes wrong. So anyway, I think that's a good bill. We support it, and I think you should too. Senate Bill 7018. Oh, this is a good one. All right, this is the funding bill. Hey, check this out. We made some noise about House Bill 14. That was a hold harmless bill that was essentially that was essentially going to hold school districts harmless per their budget. So where we've seen a major drop in enrollment in some cases because parents have pulled their children out of school and now opted for homeschool and private school. And by the way, many aren't returning their children back to school to the public system in 2021. House Bill 14 was still going to fund that school district according to 2019 enrollment levels. So it was just going to skip the fact that you and I, as tax-paying parents, pulled our kids out of the school, and it was going to give them the money anyway. It was going to hold them harmless. We made some noise about that bill. I'm very, very against that bill, and I just saw online that Representative Sapicki has pulled that bill. The bill's been withdrawn. So thank you, Representative Sapicki. I think that was a good move. Thank you for withdrawing that bill. But look what was introduced. Senate Bill 7018, run by Senator Johnson and Representative Lamberth. Again, the two guys that you would expect to run legislation from the governor's office. So where they've pulled the bill that we made noise about holding harmless the school districts, here's what this bill will do. Just a little paragraph. That's all it is. Just adding a little paragraph to the code. But here's what it does. It allows the BEP Review Committee, the committee who determines how the funding gets appropriated for the basic education program here in Tennessee per our student enrollment. It basically says that they should look at the budgets for the next 3 school years, and if they determine that those budgets are negatively affected by a drop in enrollment due to COVID-19, they can give an analysis in their annual report and make recommendations as to how to reformulate the way they calculate the funding per student enrollment for the school district. In case that sounds confusing, let me clear it up. It means instead of holding the school districts harmless for the drop in enrollment, which granted, they pulled the bill because it sounded really bad, we're going to work around that and still send that money to the school districts by simply allowing them to change the formula. Oh, so you had a drop in enrollment, but you'd still like more money, so we just changed the way we calculate the funding per student, and we bump that up a little bit so that you still get your money. And what does that do? It holds them harmless. So we have a hidden hold harmless bill called Senate Bill 7018. I think you should know about it. I think you should also know that Tennessee Stands is against the bill. Why? Because we shouldn't be concerned with sending tax dollars into school districts when there is a decrease in enrollment because that school district is not doing its job and parents are making the very wise decisions for their children to put them in better situations so that they can actually get educated. We've suggested a bill that would hold families harmless and perhaps reimburse families for costs they've incurred for homeschooling and private schooling and whatnot. Maybe that's fallen on deaf ears because they're still trying to give the school board money. But anyway, so that's good old Bill 7018. There's that. And last one I've got for you. This is a bad one. This might be the worst one. Honestly, this might be the worst one, and you should really be paying attention to this one. And we should make sure that Senate Bill 7019, run by Democrat Kachina Robinson, does not pass. Listen to this. The department shall direct each local board of education and public charter school governing body to develop a plan to conduct mental health screenings and behavioral health screenings on each student in kindergarten through 8th grade during the 21-22 school year. Now, what does that sound like to you? What is that reminiscent of? Kind of is reminiscent of Penny Schwinn's well-being checks, isn't it? So the school district is now going to take it upon themselves, albeit I believe it doesn't say that it requires parental consent, but it looks like it says that the parent must be notified that the screening is taking place. But again, does not require, I don't believe, the parent's consent. But this is another effort by school districts to parent your children for you. We're now, because these our children have been harmed by COVID-19 mentally. So the school district is going to take it upon themselves to do mental health and behavioral health screenings. Now, here's how they're going to do that. Page 2 of the bill, they are going to make an adjustment to the BEP formula, to the basic funding formula, which will now include an amount of money sufficient to hire one full-time psychologist for every 2,500 students and one full-time social worker for every 2,000 students. So now your schools, for every 2,000 students or so, will have a full-time licensed psychologist and a full-time social worker per the state of Tennessee, giving mental health and behavioral health checks to your children, kindergarten through 8th grade, to make sure that they are processing the COVID-19 pandemic properly. No. We don't want schools and school employees and social workers involved in determining whether or not my child is mentally healthy. That's my job as a parent to determine that, and my job to coach them through their emotional well-being. Thank you very much. I would like for you to concentrate on teaching my students how to read, how to do math, understanding some science, some physics, maybe our actual American history for a change, and our Constitution would be great. And also, we'd love for you to just open the schools and teach our kids for a bit. That would be great. With the millions of dollars that you already have, also would be great if you could figure that out. So those are just some things that are going on right now in the special session on education. Keep a watchful eye. We will do our best to communicate to you what's going on. Know that you can always go to capital.tn.gov and you can see the hearings live on video. They stream them live every day. So go check it out, capital.tn.gov. As always, please visit TennesseeStands.org, subscribe, donate. It takes real dollars to do what we do, and we could use your support. And so thank you for continuing to follow Tennessee Stands. I hope that this was helpful, and we will continue to keep you updated. Thanks so much.